الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد، أحبتي في الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حياكم الله. اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أشرك بك وأنا أعلم واستغفرك لمن أعلم. أحبتي في الله, a question was asked, and this query has been something which is a common query from some of the people about racism in Islam, or is racism kufr and things of this nature. So one of the things we have to know is racism la shak. If we define racism as is somewhat commonly known as to believe in the superiority of one race over another, to believe in the superiority of one race over another. This is what I mean when I'm defining the concept of racism. And this type of arrogance, no doubt, is a resemblance of the shaitan. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever resembles a people, then he is from them. So a person, this is a trait, a devilish evil trait, when you believe you are superior to others due to your race. Now, there's a difference between racism and perhaps a bit of prejudice, that you have a prejudice, or a preference. For example, someone can say, I'm Arab and I prefer to marry from my tribe. That's a preference. That's not racism. But if the reason is because of superiority, then this is where you've gotten into prejudice and to the level of racism, which is absolutely impermissible. It is haram, and as some of the scholars mention, that perhaps this can fall into a type of disbelief, and that's because the shaitan himself was due to his arrogance, which was a type of, almost like a type of racism, which racism is built upon arrogance. If you think you're better than someone else because your skin is lighter, your eyes are greener, or because you have some color and some flavor, and you believe that your flavor and your color is superior to others, then this is a type of arrogance, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us all. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala has created us in nations and tribes to know one another. لِتَعَرَّفُوا. And when the Malaika, they were asked and commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sujood. فَسَجِدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Kitab al-Kareem in Surah Al-Baqarah, so the Malaika were commanded to make sujood, and they made sujood, except for Iblis, meaning Iblis was not a jinn malaika, he's not an angel, he's a devil from the jinn, and he refused, Abba. And then Allah Ta'ala mentions, not only did he Abba, wastakbara, and he was arrogant, and Allah Ta'ala says, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, and that he is from the disbelievers. So this is one of the ways that the scholars view, racism as being like a type of kufr. Okay? And Allah Ta'ala knows best. All of what we do know, because if there's a tashbih there's a resemblance between the traits of wicked disbelief, and there's arrogance in there inherently, that this is an evil, wicked assass, and like an ideology. Because more often than not, there's an ideology behind it as well. For example, if we look at in America, when we have, for example, And we're talking about the more extremist aspects of racism, because also we have to know that racism, like with other sins, tafawud, it has different levels. Someone can be slightly racist compared to someone who is extremely racist, someone who literally lies. For example, my mother had a childhood friend, a friend who was, until she died, this woman, went to the same church, it's very close to our family, and a white lady, good friends with my mother, and she used to date African American men. And her father hated that so much, he used to say that, Allah musta'an. I don't know if I even want to repeat it. But anyway, he likened African American men to animals in that sense. So this is a level of extreme hatred, okay? So much so that you will invent and make up tales and make up lies about others. For example, the Nation of Islam is a good example of an extremist ideology as far as their level of black nationalism. So much, instead of sufficing in themselves, say, hey, we take pride in our people and pride in our achievements, they go to the extent they had to demonize white people, okay? For them, to such an extent to where they invented their ideology. They invented a story that they came from they were invented in a laboratory by a wicked scientist, Yaqub, or I forgot his name, and all of these other things, these myths, but they use the myths to substantiate their hatred and their ideology of racism. So this shows you how those distorted ideologies, how they definitely branch from kufr, how they lead and aid kufr, and sometimes in and of themselves are just a total kufr because they are a rejection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. So those are just a few points I wanted to mention. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, to protect us from kufr, protect us from shirk, protect us from nifaq, protect us from racism and any and all forms of evil. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.